Greetings, dear readers. I decided to write an article on the concept and phenomenon of honest business. Having discussed my previous articles with some of my acquaintances, including those who are actively involved in business, which they, of course, read before expressing their opinion about them, and having thought about their words about them, I realized that I should explain to you, my readers, some key points related to business, which I did not explain well enough in my previous articles. I considered it necessary to explain some things to you in this article, so that you would not have a contradictory attitude to the rest of my materials. The point is that I have constantly made it clear to you that a business that brings people, well, maybe not a lot, but more or less normal money, which is enough for a comfortable life, is, let's say, not entirely honest. And at the same time I, beating my fist on my chest, claim that I myself am engaged in mostly honest business, that I am almost a saint, and bring only pure and bright things to people, earning good money. How is this possible? How can you earn normal money and still be honest? We will talk about this. Well, first of all, I must tell you that I am certainly not a saint, and never have been one, and in my past life there was enough crap. I earned money, including by not the most decent methods. However, one should judge a person or an organization not by some individual indicators, but by their totality. There are people and there are companies that do a lot of bad things for society, pursuing exclusively their own selfish goals, and for this they can of course be condemned, criticized, and even hated. But the good that they also do for this society, conducting their activities, covers, or rather, can cover their, her bad deeds. That is, you see, when there is more good than bad, then we have the right to judge a person, an organization, a company, a state well, we can close our eyes to the bad, if there is not much of it, having a lot of good. It's just that when there is more benefit from someone or something than harm, then it's better to pay attention to the benefit, not the harm, because there are no saints in this world, and we will not get crystal honesty and decency from anyone. Man is not perfect, what can you do? And if he is not perfect, then how can he create a perfect, that is, an absolutely honest business? Nevertheless, any type of activity should be useful, and it should be more than harm. This is the position from which we should evaluate this or that type of business, talking about it as an honest or dishonest business. Well, of course, if you agree with my approach to evaluating something or someone, maybe you consider an honest business to be a business that has nothing to criticize at all, which eliminates all its flaws or skillfully hides them. I think this approach to evaluating a business is also fair and necessary. Although constant, but moderate criticism is very useful in itself, it is necessary so that people do not relax, and we will always have something to criticize for, both any business and any person. Some businesses, like some people, may stink more than others, but they can also be of great benefit to us. However, if someone does something bad to us, we will remember it for a long time, not paying attention to all the good that this someone has also done for us. We, people, perceive the bad most acutely, the negative affects us the most, while we perceive something good as the norm. But such an attitude to various phenomena and people is not always justified, because if we do not compare one evil with another, choosing the lesser, then we will see only evil everywhere, because, I repeat, there is nothing ideal and perfect in this world. Some bad things are really so bad, and even terrible that you don't want to pay attention to anything good that is associated with these things. Not every good in large quantities can outweigh even a small, but at the same time, strong in sensations evil. In such cases, the question arises, what do we get by mixing a barrel of shit with a barrel of honey? The answer is obvious, 2 barrels of shit. I will say even more, a spoonful of shit in a barrel of honey, when this shit is well mixed with honey, turns this barrel of honey into a barrel of shit. Therefore, of course, when creating a business, and in general when dealing with people, as a private person, as an individual, you should pay special attention to your reputation. Half of our lives we work for our name, then the other half of our lives our name works for us. Remember this wise phrase? But some businessmen do not care about their reputation, creating their businesses, from which there is little or no benefit at all, but they promote them with our money, make way. Well, what can I say here? It was precisely in order to at least partially separate the wheat from the chaff that I decided to write this article. Let's ask ourselves what each of us understands by the phrase, honest business? Probably, we are talking about a business that is run honestly, or it is an honestly created and honestly run business, or it is a business that is not dishonest. No, seriously, I am not making fun of you. Think for yourself, what can be understood by the word honest? Is it like, what, a detailed report in which, for example, I tell everything point by point about how my business was created and how it currently functions? I share information with all people about what profit it brings me and whether all people are happy with what I do. Do all those who in one way or another come into contact with my business consider it useful and necessary for them? For society? When I talked to people about this topic and asked them what they considered honest business and honesty in general, everything rolled into some kind of illogical, chaotic abstraction, in which you can't find the ends to understand anything. Don't philosophize, they told me. Well, guys, we need to somehow understand what we're talking about. Words are words, but they also need to be endowed with meaning, and not just any kind, but common sense. Personally, from the moment I more or less studied people's lives, I judge everything from the point of view of the usefulness or uselessness of some kind of activity for people, and not for some of them, but for the majority of people. The majority should be happy. For example, our president reasons in the same way. He says, I work for the majority. This is reasonable, you must admit. True, as for the president, for some reason it sometimes seems to me that he works not for the majority, but for some mysterious minority, which this same majority has in all its cracks. Well, okay, this is not our topic. Who knows what kind of paranoid and delirious thoughts wander in my head? Why pay attention to them now? So, speaking about business, about honest business, it would be more correct for us, from my point of view, to evaluate it from the position of its usefulness. We must look at what benefit and what harm a particular business brings to society, and, as it were, subtracting from the benefit it brings to most people the harm it causes to most people, see what we are left with, a spoonful of honey or a spoonful of shit. Let me give you an example. Let's say I am engaged in extracting oil in some place, that is, I am the president of an oil company, I'm dreaming, and the extraction of this oil is associated with various unpleasant moments, with harm to nature, with the exploitation of workers, with tax evasion and similar moments for which I, as a businessman, could be reproached, or even shot. It would seem that everything is clear. I am a scoundrel, a villain, an exploiter, a thief, a saboteur. My business is dishonest, and generally unnecessary. Or is it a necessary business? And what benefit do I bring by doing this business, and how much effort did I put into creating this business, and with whom can I be compared, saying that I, as a person who is engaged in oil production and its subsequent sale, am a fraudster and a scoundrel, against the background of whom am I a scoundrel, against the background of which other businessmen engaged in the same business? You understand, yes, what questions should be answered before you begin to at least more or less objectively evaluate a person and his business. Well, okay, let's say you don't ask yourself these questions. Watching me, a bastard like me, earn my millions, you want to punish me for my crimes. Let's say you grabbed me by the ass, brought fair charges against me, then hanged me in front of a crowd thirsty for blood, restored, so to speak, justice, destroying the evil in my person. What happens next? Do people need oil? I suppose they do. If they didn't need it, no one would extract it for shit, everyone would use solar or some other energy. Therefore, someone has to head my business in order to pump this oil, sell it, or refine it and sell it. In short, someone has to take my place to deal with black gold instead of me. Who will it be? An honest and decent person who will take better care of the environment than me, and steal less, and robots will work for him instead of workers, and people left without work will receive generous benefits, and the new owner of my business will pay all the taxes, being content with a modest salary? Or what, or will everything remain the same? Or if something changes, will it be insignificant? Think about it, what self-respecting manager, and most importantly, capable of running a complex business, will slog all day long, bear great responsibility, afraid of ending up on the gallows, like me, in order to extract oil for, of course, a grateful people? And if it turns out that the one you put in my place is worse than me, worse in terms of honesty and decency, or worse in terms of competence, then what? Everything is known in comparison, brothers and sisters. You may hang me, you may take my business away, but in my place you will not put an alien from Mars, but a person who is as vicious by nature as I am. And it is not a fact that he will be more useful to you than I am. This example shows us that before cutting something off, we need to measure 7 times. That is, we must be sufficiently competent in certain issues related to business, people, before judging someone or something more or less objectively. Yes, all businessmen are dishonest to some extent, they are exploiters, they are deceivers, they resort to various methods of unfair competition, they sometimes bear absolutely no social responsibility, they manipulate the market, and so on and so forth. All this exists, I do not take back my words, in business, as well as in ordinary life. Sometimes you have to twist and turn in every possible way just to survive. Thus, in general, businessmen, in their overwhelming majority, are dishonest people. But they cannot be honest, that's the thing. Therefore, before throwing a stone at them, we should also look at ourselves in the mirror. Well, none of us are without sin, not without sin. Only some people have more sin, and sometimes much more, and these people really do us a lot of harm. That is why we allow ourselves to condemn businessmen, criticize the authorities, and express our opinions on certain things, hoping to change something in this way. Some businessmen, together with their business, are a barrel of shit with a teaspoon of honey in them, that is, there is incredibly little benefit from them, but a lot of harm. There is no doubt that we must fight against such businesses, we must crush the nit in the bud, not allowing it to develop. And if this nit has already formed and spread its tentacles everywhere, then the evil it creates must be, at the very least, criticized by us. We must not silently allow it to impose its rules of life on us. There is no need to justify earning money in every possible way, as some unreasonable weaklings do. Shit should be called shit, and honey honey. Think for yourself, what kind of business can we call pure evil? Crooks and thieves, having felt freedom and impunity, quickly begin to get impudent and corrupt society with their parasitism on it and a cultivation of this parasitism. And if some businessman who brings coffee from, say, distant Brazil, hoping to sell it with a small markup acceptable to most people and thus make money, can be considered an honest businessman, then some absolutely unnecessary intermediary whose task is to issue the correct documents to this businessman, and because of this, the businessman has to increase the final cost of coffee several times, because such documents cost money. Then this intermediary is not a businessman, he is a parasite. Pestilent. The same goes for all these monopolists who, at first glance, offer such necessary services for society that you can't call them pests, but considering the fact that they strangled a bunch of their competitors in various ways, all these small shops, tents, markets, where the assortment was wider and the prices were lower, it turns out that they actually caused great harm to society, And who knows how honest their business can be in this case, considering its usefulness. And don't say that business is business, that everything is right, that's how it should be, the strong survive, and the weak lose. This is a very stupid point of view, which for some reason many adhere to, because it means that everything weak must eventually perish. But then, following this logic, sooner or later everything will perish. If this concept were reasonable, then in the developed countries of the world they would not have created anti-monopoly services that should monitor order in the market of goods and services. And they should not just monitor this order, as we do, but if necessary, establish this very order. Otherwise, the tyranny of monopolies will turn our lives into hell, which we are already observing and feeling today. Now I will tell you the most important thing that will allow you to understand why I wrote in some of my articles that I personally run an honest business, maybe not crystal honest, but much more honest than many large businessmen. It's all about the scale of the business. The larger the business, the more shit there is in it, because in a large business you can steal more, in a large business you can neglect your clients, because there are many of these clients, and if you are a monopolist, then your clients will not go anywhere, they will tolerate you. Just as your workers will not go anywhere, no matter how mercilessly you exploit them. Because, firstly, large businesses create a large number of jobs, where people will settle one way or another, because they need to work somewhere. Secondly, in a large business there will always be better fed workers and less fed workers, which means that people's opinions about this business and about justice in general will be different. And thirdly, a large business, one way or another, will face staff turnover. Since you cannot talk to each employee individually, you cannot adapt to each one, you cannot select each one for your business. Therefore, the larger the business, the more satisfied and dissatisfied people will work in it. The dissatisfied will run from place to place, trying to grab a bigger piece. This is natural. Fish look for where it is deeper, and a person where it is better. You and I know this, therefore, in a large business, something will always go wrong, and to say that you, as the owner of such a business, should monitor its cleanliness, trying to be fair to all your employees and clients without exception, is, to put it mildly, naive. Thus, not being involved in large business, I do not face all these problems. There is practically no hierarchy in my business, it is very simply arranged. I can always agree personally with all my employees, clients, and partners. And therefore, I am not forced to neglect or deceive anyone. This is what allows me to say that I am running an honest business, because my business is not big, so it is very important for it to be honest to survive. If I deceive a few of my clients, I will lose my source of income in their person. I need to be as honest as possible if I want to keep my business, constantly cooperating with these people. So it is not only unpleasant for me, but also unprofitable to deceive my clients, because my financial well-being depends on their trust in me and on the usefulness of my work with them. Sounds logical? Reasonable? That's how simple everything is for us. Business needs regular clients, like a person needs air. This is especially true for small businesses that do not have very influential patrons and are forced to survive without the help of administrative resources. High competition forces such businesses to play fair, no matter who is behind them. But big businessmen, from this point of view, are unlucky. Their business, although it brings a lot of benefits, well, as a rule, although there are often exceptions, but at the same time there is a lot of harm from them, which people, as we have already found out above, feel much more acutely, and therefore the larger the business, the less honest it looks. Because it is less honest, but at the same time, we cannot do without this or that big business. Ask yourself, how hard is it to be the same president of the country, when formally under your control is everything and everyone, including all the filth that exists in any society and that harms this society. All these bandits, corrupt officials, gopniks, speculators, parasites, idiots, and so on and so forth. All this scum must somehow be kept in check. They all poison people's lives, all these problems in the economy, various kinds of social problems, they all seem to be on your conscience, you need to solve them. And the people demand that you bring order, you are the president, so you are in charge. But you cannot send every freak to the monkey house yourself, you cannot slap every speculator on the knuckles, you cannot keep an eye on every swindler and parasite. A well-coordinated system is needed here, and it can only be built with the help of reliable people, and not from all sorts of shit who crawled out of rags to riches. Although, yes, you have some people under your command, you have opportunities, there are appropriate structures, there is some kind of power with the help of which you can, in any case, it is your duty as president, to do everything in your power to improve the lives of the people and develop your country for the sake of this same power. You want to manage a strong system, and not a banana republic that no one in the world will reckon with. Only, your power is not always absolute, your orders are not always unquestioningly carried out and carried out correctly, and not all people can be under your control, some of them do not give a damn about you and your decrees. But you cannot punish all of these people and not always, because they are important for the system and there is no one to replace them. So you have to deal with what you have, doing your job within the limits of your real capabilities, while the people, of course, will be dissatisfied with you if something in the area under your control and in the country as a whole works poorly. In general, presidents, given their position and the scale of the resources under their control, are probably the most sinful and most dishonest people in the world. But we cannot do without these dishonest people, and we cannot make them honest either. However, we have every right to demand order in the country from them. But that's not all, because even in big business it is possible to establish more or less acceptable order for the vast majority of people, if you try. Of course, there will be dissatisfied people, because they always exist, but the majority of people, both clients and employees, as well as business partners, can be happy with everything. Consequently, even a big business that benefits many people and infringes on few in anything can be considered honest, at least conditionally. But for this, firstly, the owner of this big business must be a decent person, or at least he must be forced to be one, and secondly, he must completely control his business, that is, have real absolute power over it. You can be as honest a person as you like and strive to run a truly honest business, without deceiving anyone and without exploiting anyone too mercilessly, but as the example I gave above with the position of president, or, say, with the position of director of a large company, shows, you will not succeed if you have little control over anything. If you, as the president of a country or the director of a large company, give orders to your subordinates that they will not follow for one reason or another, and you do not know how to make them follow your orders, then your country or your business will not be able to become what you want it to be. It is your business, as a single integral system, that matters to your clients, your partners, and your employees, and not only and not so much you yourself, as the head of this business. It is important for people to benefit from this or that business, and not to know what a wonderful person its founder and director is. Therefore, if this system, your business, does not work well, then even if you have wings behind your back, people will slander both you and your business for nothing. A businessman must have real power if he wants to control his business and make it what he thinks it should be. The people working for him must obey him unquestioningly, then everything that relates to his business will really depend on him, on the owner of the business, and not on circumstances or any third parties. In connection with all of the above, such a phrase as the vertical of power comes to mind. In my opinion, such power is necessary in many cases, because the power really must be vertical, so that the manager can really manage someone or something. Vertical power has its drawbacks, but if we are talking about a responsible and decent manager, then he needs such power, otherwise he will not be able to do anything with what is formally under his power, but in fact is managed by God knows who and how. These are my thoughts, friends, regarding honest business, which in reality will never be completely honest, just as no person can always tell people only the truth, but we all need to adhere to certain ethical standards. It is clear that the scale and type of activity of a particular business will affect how honest and useful it will be for people, and the larger it is, the more it will not only benefit, but also harm. What can I say? When you cut down a forest, chips fly. When I was involved in large-scale projects, when my business was moderately impressive in size, I had to do a lot of bad things, and I slightly deceived clients, and sometimes cheated with partners and sometimes with hired workers. I did not act very humanely, perfectly understanding how my behavior looked in their eyes. Well, what can I say? I remember stealing money from my parents as a child, not much and not constantly, but I stole, and now I regret it. Big businessmen have a sea of sins, I know this from their own stories, and there is no getting away from it, because our world and our society are arranged in such a way that in it some people will always exploit other people in one way or another. So the bigger a person's business, the more skeletons he has in the closet, and therefore if necessary, you dig well, you can dig up a lot of bad things about any big man. In any big business, there is always something for which its owner or owners can be reproached or even punished, no matter how useful this business is for society. Take at least such useful companies for many people as Apple, Google, Microsoft. They have many sins, if you rely only on the news, and what is going on inside them, you and I have no idea. But this does not mean that the heads of these companies should be hanged, true, although sometimes their appetites need to be curbed, as do the appetites of all other large businesses. Why is it important for us at all for business to be as honest as possible? In my opinion, there is no need to even philosophize or invent anything when answering this question. In order for our life to be normal, that is why we need normal business, that is, more or less honest and useful, and not all these damn pyramids and various hyped brands that sell us cheap Chinese junk for big money. Because selling minibuses to illiterate cattle is of course profitable, but it is unpromising from the point of view of social stability and social development. All these primitive thieving schemes, all these marketing and other activities that stupefy the brainless consumer, roll our life down to the level of maggots swarming in shit, whose goal is to eat more shit. I am not saying that we should all set ourselves goals that are predominantly non-biological in order to be normal people, aimed exclusively at creation, and not at devouring everything and everyone, including ourselves. I am saying that any kind of activity should be limited by reasonable limits of what is permitted, and if people step outside of them, they should be stopped, regardless of their status. Permissiveness breeds scum who then cynically exploits some people, showing them an example of how to live in order to live, not just exist, and with a false smile fleece other people, whom they don't even consider people, to the last thread. All this will be considered the norm as long as we accept it as the norm. And all this will turn our society into brainless parasites, eating their own shit like pigs. We are already eating shit, both literally and figuratively, and we also pay big money for it, despite the fact that modern technologies are able to provide us with high quality and cheap food and equally high quality and cheap things. And so, no matter what you touch, almost everywhere there is complete parasitism. And all because of the parasitic business, the goal of which is only profit, for which businessmen are ready to deceive everyone, in all possible ways. And many of us accept this as the norm, and even defend this state of affairs, even without any personal interest in it. You cannot pay workers wages for 6 months. And why pay them if everyone works anyway and keeps quiet? You can sell low-quality goods and provide low-quality services and at the same time be rude to your customers, because you still get paid, you spit in people's faces, and they come to you again. You can steal money from children and old people, because it's all about money, not about people and not about what kind of person you are. This is what we cover up, what we agree with. How we behave ourselves is what we then have, or this something rotten, stinking, degenerate, has us. Remember that neither the amount of money, nor the possession of expensive things, nor your political views or lack thereof, nor your erudition, but slavish submission to someone who is stronger, more important, richer, cooler, makes you a submissive cattle, first of all in the eyes of those to whom you have submitted. When you do not respect yourself and the people around you, when you do not adhere to any moral and ethical standards, you are not a person, in the social sense of the word, you are an animal, a beast, with the corresponding behavior. And it does not matter how much money you have, what kind of business you have, how expensive your car is, other property. If you behave like cattle, then the fate that awaits you will correspond. And cattle is intended for shearing and slaughter. You yourself see, if you follow the news, that not only skinny sheep are used for meat, but also fat ones, when they get around to them. The animals eat each other like spiders in a jar. So it's not about money, but about the person, about his quality. It is the person who determines by his behavior who he will be in life and what he will sow around him. Business, in my deep conviction, should be honest, or rather, it should strive for honesty, so that not the money, but the business, has meaning for the person who is engaged in this business. Compare life in developed countries and in countries where human life is worth nothing, and where people live not by the law, but by concepts, and you will see the difference. After all, even savages, barbarians and motley cattle, considering themselves normal people, want to live in so-called normal, civilized countries, where there are normal laws and they are observed, and not in some wild jungle, where some animals cruelly exploit others. Most people are drawn to a better quality, calm, safe and well-fed life. And the quality of life is determined not by the wealth that a person or a country has, but by how this person or this country manages this wealth. People who do business can think only about money and be the same trash as simple workers, who, especially in wild, underdeveloped countries, have never been and are not taken into account. Or they can think about something more, for example, about the people at whose expense they earn their money. And like some American businessmen, they can do something useful for society, for example, build libraries and hospitals, not to mention a more or less humane attitude towards their workers. You see for yourself what countries everyone is eager to live in, and why. Business should bring maximum benefit to society and minimum harm, and we should all strive for this, and not just those who create all these businesses and little businesses. We all need this, I hope, because the power of money, which most people worship today, is not in the interests of the majority, no matter how you look at it. True, as long as this very majority is associated with garbage and dirt, including in the eyes of the majority itself, the power of money is needed. High culture is not able to replace it. This power, is needed to maintain order in such a still wild society, in which people do not want to be people by their own will, but try to be them out of necessity, mainly because of fear of violence and deprivation. So business adapts not only to power, but also to the society in which it is created. So the question is it possible to create an honest business in a dishonest and uncultured society?